Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. 1874 on the southern plains. Wind skims the Llano Estacado and the buffalo herds fade into dust. Forts and agencies sit like islands on grass. Trails from the east cut toward the Canadian River breaks the Ouachita country and the Red River forks. Numunuu Comanche, Kaigwu, Kiowa, Tsistsistas, Southern Cheyenne and Hinonoeino Arapaho. Name the ground first. United States Army columns and hunters move across it with scouts in front. Medicine Lodge promises sit on paper while railheads deliver flour, coffee, and cartridges. Each wagon strengthens the east and weakens winter stores on the plains. Adobe Walls still echoes. Annuities run late. Rations fall short and skirmishes rise where couriers spread rumor faster than orders. The land hides decisions in canyons and bowls. Find the wintering places first, and a season can be decided without a set-piece battle. The question is plain and hard. What forces in 1874 to 1875 broke long resistance on the southern plains, and why did they decide the outcome? This story matters because logistics and policy shape a frontier as much as courage. Before winter ends, Palo Duro Canyon will write the answer in ash hoofprints and agency rolls. After Medicine Lodge, the paper lines narrowed free movement each season. Agency rules fixed ration days and travel permits. The grass still looked open, but the calendar closed in. Railheads at the edge of the plains pulled hunters west. Hides turned into coffee flour and cartridges. Markets rewarded distance more than treaties. Buffalo herds broke into scattered bands. Hunters crossed the Llano Estacado after Adobe Walls with bigger wagons and longer rifles. The moving larder of the nations thinned. Agency ledgers showed annuities late and short. Interpreters carried talk of cuts and arrests. Winter planning turned into guessing. United States commanders wrote a plain objective: end raids, protect hunters, and drive bands to agencies. The method would be pressure through season and supply. Columns drilled from Fort Sill, Fort Concho, Camp Supply, Fort Dodge, and Fort Griffin. Scouts mapped water and grass and fords. Depots stacked corn beans, hard bread, and ball cartridges. Numunuu Comanche councils weighed choices. Ride deeper into the mesas, strike stations, or split into smaller camps. Each path spent horses faster. Kaigwu Kiowa families guarded winter caches in side canyons. Elders warned that a camp found before frost meant hunger after snow. Young men argued for bold raids to push hunters back. Tsistsistas, Southern Cheyenne leaders watched the Canadian River crossings. They counted cartridges and saddles against mouths to feed. The math grew tight. Hinonoeino Arapaho bands moved between the Ouachita and the North Canadian. Runners linked camps with short messages and long silences. Distance still protected them more than paper. Policy shifted from promises to enforcement. The talk moved from gifts to compliance. Miss an agency roll and rations could stop. Hunters told stories of rich takes beyond the caprock. Stations traded whiskey and led for hides and gossip. These stories reached forts faster than formal reports. Telegraph lines tied posts into a single ear. A raid in one district brought riders in another. Delay no longer favored the mobile side. Weather entered the plan. Officers wrote that a winter strike could break mobility without a major battle. Cold would do work that bullets alone could not. Logistics set the pace. Mules hauled corn for cavalry horses and wagons hauled wood for camps. Without corn, an army walks, and without horses, a nation walks. By midsummer, the map was ready. 5 columns would press toward canyon country and wintering sites. The stage was set for a season decided by stores, horses, and the last strong herds. June 1874 breaks with rifle shots at Adobe Walls. Hunters brace buildings while riders test range and wind. The echoes run far across the Canadian River country. In the wake of that fight, hunters press deeper onto the Llano Estacado. Wagons lengthen and stacks of hides grow. Rumor outruns patrols. Agency talk turns hard. Miss a roll and rations can stop. Interpreters warn that winter will punish any camp caught light. United States officers meet at line posts and sketch a convergence plan. 5 columns will move on separate axes. The goal is winter stores and horse herds. Scouts ride from Fort Sill toward the Washita Breaks. They mark water holes with small cairns and note fresh pony sign. Dust columns confirm traffic in side draws. Near Sweetwater Creek, a patrol trades shots with a fast-moving party. The grass burns short and bright behind them. No bodies are left on the ground. On the Canadian River, a mail coach is halted and stripped. The driver counts the arrows in the boot after the riders are gone. The report reaches Camp Supply by telegraph before dusk. Hunters at low stations swap whiskey for cartridges and stories. They point west and speak of rich country under the caprock. Those words pull cavalry like a magnet. Kiowa and Comanche councils move camps into deeper canyons. Women cache poles, parfleches, and spare saddles. Night fires are kept small. A storm line rolls off the high plains. Wagons bog at shallow crossings and teams labor. Patrols learn that weather is a third force. At Fort Concho, quartermasters stack corn for horses and hard bread for men. Freight runs mark the speed of the campaign. Without corn, a column slows to a walk. A courier from Camp Supply brings word of a skirmish near Wolf Creek. The trail shows shod cavalry and unshod ponies braided together. Scouts judge numbers by dung and the width of dust lines. We strike at first light. The canyon holds animals and stores enough to sustain war. If we cut the herds, the fight will fade with the grass. Officer field order. Extract Frontier Post Room. Audi 74. 09. 20. Cheyenne riders feel pressure on the crossings. They take the north banks and leave false trails in sand. Small groups lead larger pursuers into heat and distance. Kiowa families keep to shadowed bowls off the main canyon floors. Children carry small bundles and old people ride steady mounts. The goal is to outlast the search. Along the Double Mountain Fork, scouts find a trampled ford and wet ash. A cook pit tells of a camp lifted in haste. The column presses on with light packs. Buffalo herds fragment into wary pockets. Hunters chase scattered bands and expose their own camps. That movement gives scouts new lines to read. Near McClellan Creek, a picket line snaps in the night. Shots flare and die. At dawn, the ground shows many hoofprints and few shells. Telegraph clicks tie Fort Dodge, Fort Sill, and Camp Supply. A raid in one district now brings riders in another within days, not weeks. Delay loses its old power. Quanah Parker rides a narrow loop between camps. He weighs grain against distance and children against pride. Choices shrink as the map fills with columns. An army detachment seizes a small cache of dried meat kettles and poles. The officer notes the find in a dry hand. He leaves a burned circle as a mark. Cold nights begin earlier than expected. Frost on saddle blankets tells its own forecast. A winter strike now promises more than a summer chase. By late September, scouts sight smoke where smoke should not be. The rim shows cut trails dropping into a deep red cleft. Guides nod once and point to the entry. Columns converge toward Palo Duro Canyon, Texas. The plan is simple and severe. Drive out the horse herds, burn the stores, and leave winter to finish what bullets begin. Columns ride light at first light. Guides from the agency scouts point to side draws and water bowls. The command keeps pace by the slowest mule. From Fort Sill, the southern column angles toward the Washita Breaks. From Camp Supply, another drives southwest along the Canadian River. The map shows teeth closing. Quartermasters count out corn per horse per day. When sacks run low, speed falls. Officers trade cartridges for forage at lonely stations. Scouts advance in pairs and read ground like script. A heel gouge at a ford means hurry. A cold camp means the quarry trusts distance. A courier brings orders sealed against dust. The plan repeats in hard ink. Strike horses, burn stores, avoid long firefights. Destroy cached supplies and drive all serviceable animals. Avoid entanglement with large concentrations unless surprise is assured. Department order extract Tly field copy line. Post office 874 09 23. The first contact is a blur near Tule Creek. Shots trade across brush and sand cut banks. Riders disappear into a draw and dust eats the view. Pickets tighten at night. Saddles stay near blankets and carbines rest across knees. The cold makes fingers slow. On the rim of Palo Duro Canyon, the ground drops without warning. Below lie poles, parfleches, kettles, and grazing bands. Men whisper, though there is no need. The descent is steep and rough. Mules balk at the ledges and troopers lead them by halter. A single slip would break a column. Camps shatter at the first rush. Women pull children into side draws, and young men fire from shadows. The echo returns late off the walls. Soldiers cut lodge poles and topple racks. Caches spill dried meat and tools onto red dirt. Fires take the rest. Herds are gathered with whoops and pistol shots. The mass of animals becomes a moving wall. Dust lifts like a storm. We captured many animals and rendered unserviceable what we could not remove. Stores were burned as a necessity of war. Army officer after action, report canyon floor desk. 1874, 09-29. Later tellings argue over numbers of horses and tippies. Some recall great herds lost in a single day, others divide the count by camps. The archivist voice holds this dispute as contested. A detail stacks kettles and axes for transport. Another sets fire to lodge covers that cannot be carried. The smoke column is its own report. Resistance fires from higher ledges, then fades. Ammunition weighs less than food and time. The canyon floor is no place to trade shots for long. The column splits to drive animals up 2 exits. Men lead the strongest mounts and push the rest ahead. The path scars into the slope. By afternoon, the canyon is mostly ash and hoof marks. A few parfleches survive under fallen rocks. The owners will try to recover them by night. The march out is slow under dust and noise. Guards ride the flanks to keep the herd moving. Lost horses mean lost days. Up on the caprock, the herd stretches thin. Night falls cold and the animals bunch against wind. Sentries walk to stay awake. Families regroup in side bowls beyond the main site. Children sleep under spare robes, and elders share the last kettles of meat. Plans turn from bold rides to winter survival. In the following days, patrols circle the canyon country. Small caches are found and burned. Trails are cut with deliberate crossings to show presence. A runner from Fort Concho brings word of another contact near McClellan Creek. The pattern repeats. Short fight fast, withdrawal, empty camp. Logistics begins to rule all choices. Corn for horses is life, and life now equals range. Without it, pursuit becomes walking. Agency scouts warn that more bands are moving toward the deep draws. The command orders another sweep before hard frost. Speed matters more than a decisive clash. Reports list captured animals, blankets, and tools. The language is dry and final. The effect is not. Word spreads across camps that the canyon stores are gone. Councils weigh crossing south or yielding at agencies. Pride meets arithmetic. A brief fight at a rim trail costs 2 men and several ponies. The rest break contact under dust. The command does not pursue into darkness. Telegraph clicks send summaries to line posts. Columns adjust routes to cut likely crossings. The net tightens without a single large knot. Hunters keep to their own tracks and avoid armed camps. They mark the smoke columns by day and the herd noise by night. Their stories move faster than orders. When frost hardens the ground, the campaign shifts from blows to pressure. Horses in army corrals replace horses on plains. Winter now works for one side and against the other. The turning point fixes on Palo Duro Canyon in late September 1874. Who stands where matters more than how many fire. The ground becomes the deciding actor. Objective for the columns is simple. Strip mobility by removing horses and winter stores. Force decisions before the first hard snow. Objective for the nations is survival with dignity. Keep families mounted and fed through winter. Preserve freedom of movement into spring. Constraints arrive in lists. Ammunition is finite and heavy. Rations fight for wagon space with corn for horses. Weather leans cold from blue northers. Nights shorten tempers and stiffen fingers. Water sits in shadowed bowls where wind cannot reach. Orders emphasize speed and surprise. Officers accept that burning supplies is not a duel but a lever. Time becomes the weapon. On the canyon floor, the stores fall and the horses move. Mobility tilts in hours, not weeks. Non-combatants feel the change first. Immediate effect is visible on the ridges. Camps that could range a day now range an afternoon. Riders hold fire to save cartridges for food hunts. Quanah Parker measures options along narrow lines. Strike at lines of travel and risk families. Withdraw and preserve lives for a future under rule. Agency talk reaches the camps through scouts and kin. Surrender means rations under watch and the loss of independent seasons. Refusal means cold hunger and scattered graves. We intended to fight warriors, but found ourselves driving women, children, and their means to live before winter. It was harsh work, yet it worked. Field officer, private letter extract, line post quarters, 1874, 10-05. This is an admission against interest. The goal on paper is battle against armed riders. The practice targets logistics that sustain households. If the horse herds had escaped intact, the columns would have spent winter chasing ghosts across the Llano Estacado. Distance would have undone surprise. Spring might have opened the map again. If buffalo herds still lay thick, the canyon fires would have stung but not starved. Meat and hides would have rebuilt stores. Resistance could have resumed with grass. If the plan had been 3 columns, not 5 gaps would have opened for passage. A single missed crossing can rescue a season. Convergence closed that door. Human cost follows the ledgers. Families walk where they once rode. Elders feel cold sooner than soldiers, and children cough under thin robes. On the army side, frost bites hands, and mules founder in cut banks. Corn runs short, and patrols shorten to save horseflesh. The campaign taxes all bodies. The moral calculus turns gray in the smoke. Destroying kettles breaks no rifle, yet ends a ride. The archivist voice records both result and method without heat. Runners carry word that some bands will test agency terms, others will shadow the posts and wait. No one calls this victory in a single breath. Columns pivot from pursuit to presence. They mark crossings with obvious tracks and small fires. The message is that return will meet the same answer. Quanah Parker gathers people towards safer ground. He speaks of seasons to come rather than single fights. Leadership becomes a bridge rather than a banner. Turning points often hide in paperwork. After-action reports list animals taken and stores burned. The numbers are dry because their meaning is not. By early frost, initiative has moved. The nations choose the calendar of survival. The Army chooses the geometry of patrols, not battles. This moment returns to the larger forces. Logistics law and winter align against mobility. The collapse of resistance is less a blow than a slow lock clicking shut. Winter closes on the canyon country and movement slows. Small groups come to agency lines under flags they did not choose. Names are written in ledgers with uneven hands. Agency clerks open annuity rolls for the new year. Flour, coffee, sugar, and cloth are issued by family count. The ration day fixes time more tightly than any treaty clause. At Fort Sill, the agent measures boundaries on a wall map. The Kiowa Comanche Apache Reservation is drawn as lines through grass and stone. Riders learn the edges by patrol, not by fences. Quartermaster returns list animals surrendered and animals kept for issue. Some horses move into Army corrals as government property. Others are branded and assigned to agency work. A census book for 1875 counts households by band and by age. The numbers rise after each surrender party arrives. The same book leaves blanks for those still out. Medical officers note coughs, fevers, and winter hunger. Mortality lines lengthen in cold months. Army surgeons and agency doctors write similar notes in different rooms. School registers begin with a few rows and grow across the winter. Children are given paper names for the page. A slate and a line copybook replace part of the day's chores. Some families consent to off-reservation schooling in the East. Others refuse and keep children at agency day classes when available. The debate runs through kitchens, not council lodges. Allotment talk starts early and reports though land remains held in common. Survey crews ride out with chains and notebooks. Their lines ignore old trail logic. Grazing leases appear in correspondence between agents and contractors. Cattle trails touch reservation edges and then run past. Access rights become a new form of negotiation. Buffalo hunters shift trade toward hides still found on the far flats. The great herds do not return as before. A people who rode with buffalo now plan without them. Ration issues depend on punctuality and compliance. Missing a roll can mean an empty month. A rule written in a distant office becomes a winter fact. Ledger artists draw the canyon seizure in colored pencil. Horses stream up a red wall and smoke hangs above poles. A winter count mark records the year of many animals taken. Oral tradition keeps another tone. Elders say the ground itself turned against them when the stores burned. Both strands enter community memory. Quanah Parker works between camps and the agent office. He names households who need flour and argues for travel to hunt when possible. Leadership now speaks more often in lists than in war songs. Small arrests follow reported raids or stock thefts near trails. Cases move through military posts and local courts. Transfers to distant jails break family lines for a season. By spring 1875, the agency records show more surrenders and fewer missing. The cavalry patrols shorten and stiff posts become routine. Pressure turns into administration. Ceremony continues within the new limits. Songs are sung low and circles gather under watchful eyes. Language survives at night when offices are closed. Community events mark memory with runs, rides, and quiet feasts. Flags of the present stand beside stories of the past. Nations endure as governments, families, and schools. The final note of the season is not triumph and not silence. It is the sound of paper closing over a way of life that still persists in new shapes. The archivist voice names the sources as agency ledgers. Army returns school registers, census books, and winter counts. Historians broadly agree that the Red River War ended free-ranging power on the southern plains. The result came from logistics, winter timing, and converging columns more than from any single pitched battle. A second consensus point is the role of the buffalo collapse. With the moving larder gone, mobility lost its anchor and diplomacy lost leverage at agency tables. Third Palo Duro Canyon stands as the emblematic operation. It concentrated the campaign's logic into hours by removing horses and winter stores at once. Numbers remain contested. Estimates of horses captured or destroyed and the count of lodges vary by report and memoir. The narrative holds these ranges as indicative, not absolute. Attribution is also debated. Some accounts center Army command and scouts, while others stress hunter pressure and market forces. The weight likely lies into the combination. Quanah Parker's leadership draws two readings. One frames pragmatism as surrender of autonomy, and one frames it as preservation of lives for continuance. Both can be true within the same season. The war shifted law and administration on the ground. Reservation boundaries, school rosters, and ration rolls replaced seasonal routes as the main organizers of life. Land and resource regimes changed with it. Grazing leases, surveys, and rail spurs recast access and authority. Older trail knowledge did not disappear, but it no longer set the rules. Demography bent to winter arithmetic. Mortality rose in the transition years, and birth patterns followed ration cycles. Health records show the costs more clearly than battlefield returns. Cultural continuance adapted. Ceremony language and kin obligation moved into tighter spaces in different calendars. Ledger art and winter counts fixed memory where movement had once done the work. Memory keeps both pain and endurance. Community events and commemorations name the losses and the survivals. Present-day nations speak in their own voices about both. Fact and folklore cross at the canyon. Some tellings enlarge the fire and the herds to carry a moral. The archivist voice marks the moral as real and the numbers as bounded by sources. The enduring legacy is a doctrine of logistics over valor. Campaign plans that target mobility and sustenance decide outcomes when distance and season are the battlefield. This episode endures in memory because it shows how winter policy and supply can break mounted freedom faster than bullets, and how nations continue after the map changes.